So I'm Shannon Keebler. If you don't know who I am the moderator of this group. I've taught every single lesson in math expressions, kindergarten through sixth grade, and now I support teachers just like you across the nation as they implement best math practices, specifically using math expressions. So tonight our session is really for our leaders. It's for our math leadership teams, our principals, our directors, our specialists, our assistant principals, our coaches, our math team leads. If you are any of those people, then this live is for you. And we're talking about the end of the year and what can we do at the end of the year, or should we do end of year before we wrap up and we head into our summer vacations. So that's what we're talking about tonight. So we're going to talk about your plan, the people, and the process. And I'm going to have you evaluate and reflect on each one of those. Let's talk about the plan. Okay, so this is the time that I really want you to think about as a leader. How did the plan go? What was the plan? And did the vision for the plan leak, right? So we probably started the school year with a plan for our math instruction. We knew what our goal was going to be. We knew that we were going to focus on maybe a particular part of our math instruction. And I'm really going to focus in on just math in this conversation. But of course, you could do this for every subject area. So you had a plan. You had a goal in mind. What do we want to be able to do in our math instruction? What are we saying our goal is for this year? Maybe it was an official goal, like a school improvement plan, and math was the topic for your school improvement plan. Maybe it was just a data goal and you had some state data or local data that told you that you needed to beef up a certain area of your instruction. Maybe that was what you made your goal around. Maybe your major goal around individual teams, and teams had their goals. Whatever it was, I want you to look at what was the goal and how did we do. Now, you may not have the state data back yet that you need to completely do your full reflection on that, but in my mind, you probably don't need it. Okay, that's just going to be another data point that's going to fuel whichever fire you're going to keep spreading, right? So you probably have other unit data, test data, observational data that I want you to use and decide, how did we do on our plan? So when we look at the plan, I want you to think about, was it too much? Did we put too much on teachers' plates this year? Or even if you're a math team lead, maybe you did it for yourself or for your team. Okay, sometimes we just have these really big, lofty ideas at the beginning of the school. We're feeling refreshed, we're feeling rejuvenated, we're like, let's go get it, which we should be thinking, right? We want to set our expectations high. But now as we look at the year, maybe we had other initiatives and maybe we had some decision fatigue, maybe we had some PD fatigue. There was other things that were stretching us really thin and we couldn't really focus on this year's plan. Maybe it was that the plan you had in place did really well. Like you were targeting a specific group maybe in your school, maybe you were thinking about intervention in, maybe you were thinking about your core instruction. Whatever it was, I want you to go back to what you thought of August, that you were thinking, that's our plan for math for this year. And I want you to think, how did it go? Okay, now when you think about how it went, I want you to use actual data points. I also want you to use observational data and reflective data from staff members. So it might be from your perspective, how did it go and what is the data telling us? Okay, we want data over drama. Right? Sometimes the drama gets in the way and we have a particular instance, a thing that's standing out to us, but it's not really supported by data and it's fueled by emotion. Okay, we want to get the drama out and the emotion out, and we want to look at those data points and then include some other data type things, including talking to our teachers as well and getting their feedback. How do they feel the plan went, right? So get all that stuff together and I want you to reflect on, how did the plan go? Then I want you to think about the process. So we're going to talk about the plan. Now we talked about the process. How did the process go? Now, when we think about the process, I want you to do a time audit. This is one of my favorite things to do in my own personal life, in my business life, in my school life, is maybe even as a classroom teacher in your classroom life. I want you to do a time audit. How much time was devoted to the plan? Now, we're not talking about how much time was devoted to talking about the plan or to devising the plan, which is a part of it, right? We have to have time for that. But I mean, how much time did we devote to implementing what we said was the plan? What was that process like? So maybe you said, we're going to have intervention work with our intervention kids 2 times a week for 30 minutes. Did they actually work with kids 2 times a week for 30 minutes? And maybe that in your time audit, you're like, well, as we went through week by week, we're like, we missed this week because of parent-teacher conferences, and we missed this time because of XYZ, and we didn't really get, well, I would say, right, maybe your plan was, we're going to be really faithful, you're new adopters to math expressions, and you put in We're going to be really faithful to the quick practice and daily routines. That was our plan. That was our goal. Do a time audit on the process. How much time did you actually devote to it? How often and how regular did that happen? Because after we do a time audit, it's going to be really clear if we did not meet our goal, why. Time is one of the most important factors that gets in the way of us meeting our goal. Maybe you had it on your plan to meet every once a month for a staff meeting, and you were going to do some professional development around that particular area. You were going to have teams work together on the quick practice, on the daily routines. But when you did a time audit and you looked back at the agendas of all of those different meetings throughout the year, you realized other things got trumped, and it actually only happened maybe 2 or 3 times. Sometimes we give up on our goal because we feel like, well, we tried and it just didn't work. So now I guess it's just out of our hands. Like, there's nothing we can do about that. Let's move the goal. Like, don't move that goalpost. Okay, the goalpost stays. It just means there was something about our process that didn't effectively implement that plan. So a time audit is extremely helpful to decide, did we actually contribute the time we said we were going to contribute? And if we didn't, what stood in the way? I also want you to think about the feedback loop in that process. Was there a good feedback loop? Meaning, when we think about process, we think about like, okay, we talk about something, we implement it, we have a plan. Then we think, okay, well, there's going to be like maybe a professional development on that plan. And so we do some education on it. And then we're like, okay, now I want everyone to go try it. And did it die? Okay, so that's where in that feedback loop, it typically just dies. So we start a plan, we have a process that we're going to follow as to how we're going to implement that plan, but the process is like 2 steps long. Okay, so I want you to think about, did that process work? Did you get, and you're like, well, yeah, I gave them a training and they didn't do it. They didn't put it into practice. They only did it a couple days a week and we were supposed to do it 5 days a week. I'm like, okay, you got to evaluate your process. So that means there's a disruption in your feedback loop or in your planned time. Right? So there wasn't enough accountability. There wasn't coaching. There wasn't mentorship. We didn't send them to another classroom. There's something missing in that implementation as to why it did not work. So if there's enough time and we've put the time in, we gave them what they needed, and we have enough time in that master schedule for us to do it, for us to accomplish it. Like, we have the time there, right? Because time is the number one interrupter to our goals. Whether it is we don't allow enough time in our master schedule, we don't give enough routine and consistency to it, whatever it might be. The second part, though, is there's an interruption in that feedback loop, meaning we didn't do enough to close the loop. We only did a couple of the steps. I'm sorry, but you go to meetings all the time. It's not enough. You might be given a meeting and told all these things you have to do, and then a month later someone might ask you about it and you're like, oh yeah, I was supposed to, I just haven't had time. I haven't had time to put that in place. So if in that case, the time was your impediment. But sometimes it's because you don't have the skills. You're like, I know I should be evaluating, and maybe you have a list of data things you're supposed to do, or whatever it is that you right now feel a little bit of shame about and self-consciousness about. You're like, I know, I need to do that, I just haven't been able to. There's a reason why, and I need you to go to that feedback loop and figure it out. Why? Okay, for yourself. Then I want you to look at it for the plan. Why? In the plan, why didn't it work? Why wasn't it put into place? So oftentimes, again, it's time. It is accountability. We gave training on it. We were just told to do it, and we have 5,000 other things we're supposed to do. So we just couldn't do them all, so that was when I couldn't do it. If there's no accountability of like, and then in 2 weeks I want you to bring back this piece of common data, or we're going to come through with a walkthrough, I want to coach you, like I want to just see how is it going, I want to put a plan into place to see, is quick practice happening? When I walk in, when you said it was going to happen, it wasn't happening 4 out of the 5 times. It's not evaluative. It means there's a break in the feedback loop. They need more coaching, more mentorship. We're missing skills. We don't have the confidence. We don't understand the vision. Why do I have to do that? Okay, there's a lot of reasons why the process fails. So I want you to reflect on the process, time and feedback loop. Those are the 2 main places in that process I want you to evaluate. Then I want you to go to the people that you had in place to implement the plan and to follow through on the process. How did they do? So maybe you were a part of the process. It was you that was going to do some observational walkthroughs, and you had full intent to do that once a month, and you did it the first month. Okay, so there's no blame or shame in that. It's already done. We're just reflecting on it now. Reflect on, so what was it that stood in our way from that? So you were a part of the process. Why? Okay, maybe it was the people were lacking skills. So when you think about skills, you're like, well, our teachers were the ones that are implementing it. Our interventionists were the ones that were supposed to implement this plan. Our coaches were the ones that were going to be implementing this plan. Probably there's a lot of stakeholders that were going to implement the plan, okay, and the process. I need you to go to them and I need you to ask for feedback. And it's going to be kind of hard to hear. From some of them, they're going to tell you, you had too high of expectations. You threw stuff at us. We had some training on it, and then we were left on our own, like surviving on our own, little buoy out there in the ocean. I didn't understand what we were really supposed to do. I didn't have the skills to do it. I didn't have the resource to do it. My math block got cut short. My kids kept getting pulled out of that time. There's a lot of reasons why it didn't work according to those people, or those people were unable to implement the plan. Now, whether those are valid reasons or not, I'll let you decide, or work together, because there's something valid in those concerns, right? So we're going to go back to our people and we're going to evaluate and get feedback from our people. We're also going to evaluate ourselves and our part of that plan, and where did it fall short, or how successful were we? Did we celebrate along the way? So celebration, we know, is a really important piece of that feedback loop with our people. Or do we just keep throwing more and more goals, but we never stop to acknowledge how far we had come, even if we didn't make it the whole way? Right? So right now at the end of the year, it's a really good time, especially this week as we're heading into Teacher Appreciation Week, but to really honor like the stuff that we accomplished, and not just kudos, like lip service to it, right? Like there's actual data points, especially if you were doing walkthroughs or in the classroom, that you can say, hey, this was our plan and this is the part of the plan we totally killed. Like we got it, and now we're going to celebrate it. So I want you to think about the celebration piece. I want you to think about how well you communicated to people. Okay, so whether people had to communicate to you or you had to communicate to people, who was in charge of communication about the plan? And was it ever really implemented? So I'm going to just take a quick rabbit trail on this, that I oftentimes work with new schools that are implementing, or schools that have been implementing for years. And there's just something that's broken down in one of those places. Okay, plan, people, or process. Something's broken down in there, or they don't have the right people in the right roles. That sometimes is the same thing. And we tend to do this blame game, or we identify the wrong goal, right? So all three of those have to be in place in order for us to really make forward progress and have all stakeholders feel good about that forward progress. So one of the schools I was working with, they decided for their school improvement plan that they were going to focus on vocabulary. So they have a high level of language learners. They felt like the reason that their math scores were not doing what they wanted to do was because students had a language deficit. So there wasn't enough vocabulary development. And so as I looked at their plan, okay, their plan was things like, writing definitions of words and making teachers do things like word walls, and everything that was a part of their plan and their process wasn't really getting to the heart of the issue. And then the process, there was no real skills and training. It was just another to-do list of things that teachers were just supposed to now start doing. But it wasn't really attacking the goal. It wasn't like, why are our students not doing well in math? And if it really is language, is it because they're not using the language? They don't have the language? And is the plan actually going to meet that goal? And from my perspective, it wasn't. It was really weak. It was a really poor attempt at trying to throw spaghetti at a wall. Like, we kind of see this as a problem, so we're going to do these things and we're going to throw spaghetti at it and see if it sticks. I see that a lot. And then we do kind of a drive-by PD and we're like, hey, this is going to work. And we gave them training on it. Now they should be able to go do it. And I'm like, under what world? In what world does that ever happen? Right? There's so much more to implementing that. So I want you to really be reflective right now. You're burned out, you're tired, but now is when the data is real and people can give you their honest feedback about things. If you do it right now, what's going to happen with that is that you're going to now get re-inspired and reinvigorated to create a different plan for next year. You're going to give yourself the summer to think through all of that. You're going to come to my leadership workshop. So we're doing that on Tuesday of this week, and we're doing it again on the 16th. Your leadership teams can sign up for it. I'm going to walk you through all of this. So you can do this reflection all on your own, and I bet you're going to be pretty successful at identifying some areas of weakness that we can really work on. But I also think that some of us just needs an outside facilitator. I'm not making these plans for you. I'm just going to help you understand if that plan's going to work or not. And if you're attacking the right thing, the root root cause of why your data is saying what it's saying, and are we even reading our data correctly? Okay, so another really good example of this, I was working with some schools that were struggling in their 5th grade scores, and they were determined that this was a math fact issue. Okay, so it's because our kids don't have our math facts, it's because our kids don't have their math facts. And as we dug deeper, I was like, actually, if you look really, really closely at what these different strands are saying in their state data, I'm like, that's not the issue at all. Okay, so they were scoring really high on computational accuracy or computational fluency. They were scoring really, really low in things like problem solving. I'm like, computation, math facts are not your issue. They may be a sub issue. They may still be something that we're all saying is a problem, but it was not their root issue. Their kids understood procedures and fluency steps. Their kids really struggled to apply. They lacked depth of understanding. So math facts could have been a contributing factor there. It was not the root cause. So now they can spend all year long focusing on their math facts, and it's not going to move the needle on some of those scores they were hoping to move because it wasn't the issue, right? So sometimes we just need someone else to help us look at that data and decide, like, is this really the issue here? The other thing we sometimes need help with in that process is understanding the vision, and if we're all really clear about the vision. Are we communicating the vision clearly to our people? Is everyone on the same boat? Is everyone rowing in the same direction? And, well, I told them about it, okay? A third example, a district's working, I don't know, they're probably like 7 or so years into their implementation. And I said, so how clear is everybody on the components that they're supposed to implement of their curriculum, like the math expressions components? And they said, well, everyone's been through the training. And I'm like, well, when was the training? And they're like, well, when we implemented. And I'm like, 7 years ago? And I'm like, so what was your sustainability plan for that? And they're like, well, they all had the training. So they all know that, like, they're supposed to do the quick practice, and they're supposed to put student leaders, and they're supposed to, and I'm like, from 7 years ago? Okay, do you remember that implementation training? Number 1 is probably terrible. Number 2, it was one training. And number 3, it was 7 years ago, right? So that's not sustainable. They need a lot more support than that if you want us to really implement it and implement it well. Number 2, how much turnover have you had in the last 7 years? Those people don't even have a clue what you're talking about. They're like, well, their teammates are supposed to train them. I'm like, the same teammates that don't believe that they're supposed to be doing it, right? Or the ones that had training 7 years ago. Right? So I want you to think about in that process, is your plan sustainable? And did you have a sustainability plan in place? Because just because you talked about it 3 years ago does not mean we're still doing it. How many of you are like that? You're like, oh yeah, I used to do that in my classroom. It was really cool. Like, and then I just got, like, I forgot I ever did that. I'm like, all of us do. If we're not clearly communicating what's expected every year, like, here's what we believe about math, here's the components we believe are important, and here's how we're going to implement them, and here number 5,552 reasons why you should do this. And here's how I'm going to support you to make sure you have the skills, the education, and the time to do it. That's our goal. All right, friends. So if you're interested in that leadership workshop, just comment link below. We'll get you the link. There's still time. You can join us on Tuesday. You bring your whole team. So the cost, it's really reasonable. I almost did it for free because I'm like, that's how important I think it is that schools have a plan in place that they can actually be successful implementing. Whether you are like, some districts are like, I have 10 minutes like month. Like, I don't even get a staff meeting with my teachers anymore. Like, some of your PD union stuff is really, really difficult to work around. I can help you with that. Okay, so either way, whether it's 10 minutes, you have an hour a month, you've got 3 days a month, you've got whatever you've got to work with, I'm going to help you to understand if you're focusing on the right thing, if you've got the right people in the right roles, and they have the right support and feedback loop, and if the process is solid. Okay, so I'm going to help you with all of that. Again, it's a team. You're going to bring up to 8 people from your district, from your school. It can be individual schools. It could be lots of schools come together, whatever it needs to look like for you. And we'll work together for 3 hours on Zoom, and I'm going to guide you through this process. By the time you're done, you'll have a vision for what math instruction should look like with all stakeholders. You'll understand what your plan is for the 2020 school year based on your specific needs and goals. You will understand what your process is, how you're going to implement, and I'm going to give you my specific, I'm going to say trademarked, but it's not trademarked, specific feedback loop that's going to, I guarantee success with it. If you stick to my loop, you will find success. And then you'll understand all of the components of the process, the time that you should have for all those things, and including your PD. Okay, so time audit is for everything. It's for your master schedule, it's for your PD schedule, it's for all of it. I hope that was helpful. I kind of feel like I went on a tangent just a bit there because I get really passionate about this because I've worked with so many schools that are really working really hard and their teachers are working their tails off. and they're just not finding the success. Like, how can you work this hard and not see the growth? And a lot of it is that we're pointing the fingers at the wrong things, blaming the wrong things, or we just don't have the right people, plan, or process in. So I'm happy to help you with that. Focus on those things here at the end of the year. Get a good reflection in so you can make a better one for next year. And then take time this month to celebrate all of your wins. All right. Thanks all. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.